Welcome to Tech Careers Decoded, where we ask leading tech executives what skills today's IT pros and developers need to succeed in an AI-dominated landscape. Today's guest is Ev Kontsevoy, the CEO and co-founder of Teleport. To start off, please introduce Teleport as well as your company offerings.
Well, my name is Ev Kontsevoy. I'm an engineer by training. So I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of a company called Teleport. Teleport provides identity for computing infrastructure. What this means is that we issue and manage identities of machines, workloads, meaning software running on these machines, AI agents and humans, which allows them all to interact with each other safely in a trusted computing model. And the use cases for our technology, there are essentially three. Like one is we help companies, specifically their engineering teams, to securely access their computing infrastructure. Because as we all know, internet runs in data centers and engineers physically are not in the data centers. So that's how they access all of these technologies. So that's the first use case. The second use case is that this tech allows, it allows acceleration of software development. So if you have an identity layer built into your infrastructure, you could build software faster. And the third use case is that our technology is now increasingly commonly used to contain AI. So when you have AI agents running in data centers, you want to make sure that they are behaving appropriately, that they're not doing something they're not supposed to. And that's what our technology helps accomplish.
What skills would you say helps new engineering graduates to thrive in the identity, security, and general tech space right now?
So your question is specifically about engineering, okay? So in this case, like I probably want to say right away that I am not in a camp of people who believe that AI is going to obsolete programming or the software creation. So I do recommend highly that people get a computer science degree, or applied mathematics or something like this. And I will say that the skills that I don't believe are going to be obsolete anytime soon are what I would call like foundational STEM skills. That it basically starts with mathematics. Mathematics is basically a universal language that we use to describe almost everything in the world around us. It's useful outside of engineering as well. Mathematics, formal systems, like concepts of theorems and proving those theorems, all of that it will continue to be extremely important. And the reason, by the way, so if someone tries to argue with that, I would say that English, by the way, is not a very efficient language to interact with a computer. Yes, I understand it. I think we all intuitively see that it's really impressive being able to give your computer commands and instructions and ask questions using a natural language. But believe it or not, it's not very efficient. Okay, so there are way better languages that we could use to interact with artificial intelligence, and they're all rooted in mathematics. So foundational skills is what I would recommend for all engineers to hone. Um, there is another bucket of skills. Let's call them soft skills, for the lack of a better word. Um, so they will continue to be, and maybe even more important than ever. Like in a world where everyone is distributed, where almost everyone is on Zoom now, or in email, or Slack, or other forms of chat, um, it is actually putting a pretty significant constraints on bandwidth of communication, which also elevates the need for improved quality. So even like when we interview folks to join our team here at Teleport, we we give them an opportunity to access our kind of chat system. So we interact with our candidates. So to give them visibility what it's like to work here and what it's like to interact with us asynchronously in a remote way. And we're also gauging their kind of comfort level and their ability to do that effectively. So communication will continue to be like a big, um, like a skill that everyone constantly says that they value, but very few people actually intentionally work on improving as they move along in their careers. The second, look, and I know it will probably sound cliche, but we are, and I'm personally a big believer in a combination. It's like a killer combination of two soft skills. One I would call curiosity, and the second one is energy. Okay, so curiosity plus energy are extremely appealing, not just to Teleport, but I think to any employer. And the reason is because like we work in tech. Even without AI, even before AI, tech has always been a very fast moving field where specific technical knowledge, frankly, gets obsolete very quickly. So, therefore, you need people who are comfortable with the constant rate of change that never goes away. Like being in tech doesn't give you that opportunity to be like stay in time. Like you have to be moving along with the times, and the skill that lets people do that with ease without even noticing any difficulty is curiosity. So if you're constantly curious and you like learning new things, you will do very, very well in tech. But you also need to have energy for that. Essentially, another way of looking at the exact same thing is if things change quickly in tech, it means that the importance of experience is lower than in other industries, right? Because people learn a lot of stuff, and big percentage of that stuff is no longer relevant 5 years later, 10 years later. So which means that they have to relearn. So, and having curiosity alone is not enough. You also need to have an energy for it. So essentially, it makes tech an easier industry to break into because there is no experience requirement, or at least it's not as heavy as in other industries. But to compensate for that, you need to have energy. So I see energy as this kind of like a counterbalance to experience. So you need to have one or the other if you want to advance your career. And in tech, energy, I put more emphasis on energy versus experience. Show me something that proves that you are curious and you're full of energy. Okay, so the forms and shapes, how that could be communicated during the kind of interview process or the hiring process, because it might involve additional steps other than just the uh, interview itself. So all of that will work. But at the end of the day, and I don't even think it's teleport specific. I think most companies in tech would be very, very happy to have a highly curious and extremely energetic workforce. So whatever you think can demonstrate your high curiosity level and high energy will always be helpful. I will add maybe one more thing there. You didn't ask about it, but I think it's uh, it's going to be more important kind of moving forward. I always noticed that folks who kind of sit on the intersection of two worlds, they usually have an easier time like building successful careers. And when I say intersection of two worlds, I kind of mean like two different problem domains. So if someone, for example, goes and studies to be a doctor, okay, goes to medical school, and then like a few years in that changes their mind or just realize, you know what, I actually really hate the sight of blood or whatever. It's just like really, really don't want to do it anymore. And then they go and do computer science degree or mathematics degree, and then they join like a tech company because they have that medical background in addition to their primary training. It makes those people automatically more successful, more interesting, and it allows them to actually have very, very interesting ideas that are not accessible to other people. Sometimes I would even use an example to demonstrate what I'm talking about is so that in artificial intelligence kind of curriculum, in a kind of classic university curriculum on AI. So there is this algorithm called simulated annealing. So this is an algorithm that allows artificial intelligence to overcome reaching a local maxima and continue to grow its knowledge. But the idea came from metallurgy, right? So which basically means that whoever came up with that thing actually had some kind of knowledge of working with metals, right? So and that's why I always notice that folks with this dual background, they always have this insights that are kind of uniquely available to them. So that's another thing that I always recommend. Like you don't have to go and get two majors, but if you're like studying computers, if you're studying mathematics, like it wouldn't hurt to pick up a book and um, learn more about biology or I don't know, like military history, almost anything because that tends to be surprisingly useful in your day-to-day. At least that's been my experience.
Given the rapid change in the industry, do you think there are any skills that are less critical to develop that companies are less focused on looking for when hiring?
I understand the question, but I would like to reframe it, because you could either focus on isolating skills that are becoming obsolete, or you can either focus on skills that are increasing in their importance, and everything else relative to those skills becomes less important. I prefer the latter approach. Simply, I just think because it's easier to communicate. Because uh, if I were to enumerate less skills that I think are fading away, it's very easy to miss. Okay, because I believe that it's going to be quite a lot. So instead, what I will say is that everything that's not foundational skill, what I talked about earlier, it's just particularly mathematics when it comes to computers. So anything that's not that, I think, is gradually getting diminished, because foundational skills, because they're foundational, they don't get obsolete. Like the math is math, okay? So at the end of the day, every programming language we have today uh, is a mathematical construct of varying degree of quality and expressiveness and difficulty to understand. And when people say like, oh, this programming language is becoming obsolete and this new programming language is better, so like knowledge of this programming language that's disappearing, for example, like Perl, like when I was much younger, it was much more popular programming language that a lot of people felt they had to understand, or even something even more common like C. Like generally, there's a fewer and fewer jobs if you're programming C or even C++. And languages like JavaScript or even Java before that, like they're kind of growing popularity. And again, this is why I didn't like to talk about like what is declining, because there's like so many things are declining. Like sure, like C, Perl, and maybe I'm forgetting like some other languages. But the fundamental mathematical foundations on how all of these languages are constructed, they're still the same. And if you understand those, then picking up a new programming language is just it's something you could probably do in a matter of a weekend. So that's why I'm kind of zooming into mathematics, formal verification, um, capabilities, which basically means that you have to be able to produce, because I believe that's where the future of programming is going, is that we are like using AI capabilities, we will be able to formally verify whether a piece of software is correct, mathematically correct, which basically means it has no bugs and it has no vulnerabilities. Like no one can hack into it. Like we couldn't do that before because it was expensive. Like I mean, we could, but it was just too expensive to apply this to all commercial software we produce. But with technologies like artificial intelligence, I believe it's going to be standard and in fact mandatory. So this is why importance of foundational skills are going up, and that makes importance of all other skills kind of diminish over time. Another way of saying exact same thing, maybe it will be even easier to understand, is that ask yourself whether your job today, like the task you're doing, is repetitive and it's exact same thing, and it's something that can be verified by a computer. Not even performed by a computer, but verified. If a computer can 100% of the time say that you've done this properly or not properly, and you're doing it over and over again, so that is a job that's not going to stick around for long. So that's just maybe a kind of little heuristic that I can offer to your audience to apply to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Are there specific certifications that you recommend new graduates in the field should focus on getting that would benefit their careers?
So I have mixed feelings regarding certifications, um, because getting a certification and actually doing a job that certification helps with are completely different things. So there are definitely plenty of people out there who can brag about getting a lot of certifications on their resume, but they still cannot get anything done. So that is something that's kind of well understood. So in that sense, I believe certifications are, it's almost like they define kind of lower bound that an employer can expect from a candidate. Okay, and I'm also sensing a little bit this kind of form over function. So because there are all kinds of certifications and they all call like, oh, like I have certificate of this and certificate of that, but different certificates, they take different amount of effort and energy to obtain. Some are obviously much simpler, others are really, really hard. So like I wouldn't want to overgeneralize. So it is extremely context dependent. But I could, for example, offer you an example where a certification could be helpful. So perhaps the audience can extrapolate from there. So let's just say that we are building a team of like solution specialists, engineers who would use our technology to help our customers to solve problems. Okay, so not only we selling our technology, but we're also providing this kind of professional services um, that help our customers to put our technology to good use. So if our customers are evaluating this offer, so they obviously want to understand how competent our solutions engineers are. And this, if we can say that, like, in order to join this team, we have this internal requirement to have a like AWS certification, which is a certification from Amazon that says that this particular person who has the certificate has some minimum required skills to operate AWS cloud services, cloud computing services. So that would be helpful from like even from a company perspective. That's a very helpful signal to send to a customer or prospect that hey, this team actually has at least these skills. Okay, so it definitely doesn't hurt. But at the same time, I fully realize that it's very easy to spend a lot of time and money because a lot of these certificates are not free, all these programs, and the time and energy to get a bunch of certificates that will not advance your career. So my advice would be to gather as much context as you can about this particular certification program that you're evaluating, because you need to have a pretty clear view for when this certification is helpful, in what context, and what kind of person will value that certification. But without that knowledge, simply adding these certifications to a resume and spending time and energy, I just think it's a little bit like flying blind. So TLDR is do your research because not all certifications are created equal.
What do you think is the one thing that most undergraduate students misunderstand or underestimate the most when entering this space?
So first of all, I have to apologize for not having this kind of crystal ball and perfect visibility into what undergrads are feeling, experiencing, seeing. Uh, Again, we all have our different perspectives, and I hate overgeneralizing. Like for example, you said earlier that like in this economy, like with this assumption that today's economy is not a good economy, but by historical standards, like unemployment and employment, because there are two different metrics, actually in a pretty good spot. So the economy technically is doing perfectly fine. Um, so, but I totally understand that there are people out there who graduate, they have good degrees, and they simply cannot find jobs. So it's very hard for them to reconcile like this kind of the official statistics uh, from the, I believe, Department of Labor publishes that, and their personal situation that they're dealing with every day. So let's acknowledge that because I don't want anyone to be pissed. But about what I'm noticing young people talk about, like on social media or like when we try to interview them here, they definitely overvalue um, or kind of overestimate the value of formal education. So I'm noticing like plenty of people like would say like, "Hey, I've done everything that's been asked of me. I was a good student in like high school. I got into a good university. I graduated with like some good scores, and I still cannot find a job." Um, but again, remember, like education is it's for you. It's not for an employer. Like employers, they look at someone having a degree. It means that hey, that person had time, energy, and money to go get the degree. It doesn't communicate much else. What I'm simply saying, education by itself is not enough. I'm also unfortunately noticing that people sometimes when they get cynical, they would say like, well, I don't have any connections, I don't know anyone, so they're kind of overvaluing this um, Yeah, just basically connections to get into the industry. Like my impression was that has always been that the tech industry, my industry, that's the only industry I know, it's actually pretty meritocratic. So yes, it's obviously hard to establish kind of track record when you're starting from zero. But once your career is off the ground and you are building things and you're good, you will never have problems finding work in tech. Again, the entire industry is very meritocratic, and generally, like best people are doing very very well. And but so now on kind of underestimating, I'm finding that, and this is maybe connected to the value of education, formal education, but people are underestimating the importance of effort. So what I mean by that, it's very noticeable when someone shows up for an interview having put some effort into researching the company. Like I could tell and actually it happens very frequently that we're interviewing someone and you could just tell that that person they haven't spent more than 10 seconds looking at your website. They understand, like they don't quite understand what you do. They don't quite understand the customers you serve, but all of that is actually very noticeable and very, very helpful. By knowing all of these things, you communicating to someone, to a potential employer, that you put an effort into learning more about their business. And it's noticeable. And people talk about this all the time when they interview panels where people who are interviewing, when they kind of get together and decide whether to proceed with one candidate or not. And another thing that I think people are underestimating, this is specific to tech, is the importance of speed. I know it sounds very kind of obvious, like, yeah, like, of course, everything needs to be done faster. Of course, there are deadlines and speed is important. But in tech in particular, there is this deeper meaning of speed. What I mean by that is, like, what do tech companies actually do? The life cycle of a typical tech organization, from the day it was founded to the day when it became this kind of inflexible but 800-pound gorilla slowly declining. So what happens is there's usually some kind of new technology, new enabling technology that's invented or starting to be commercialized, and the company is formed to commercialize that technology. Like Oracle, for example, was formed to commercialize relational database tech that was new at the time, right? Or Microsoft or Google, like basically every company has a found like enabling technology that allowed them to be created and commercialize the tech. But remember what I said earlier, that technologies generally become obsolete fairly quickly, which means that all these companies, they are on a treadmill or maybe countdown clock, like between the time when technology is invented and between the time that it becomes obsolete. And the entire company needs to be built and grow and become big during that limited window. So that is so essentially you are trying to compress that time to be as successful as you can possibly be. So that's the pressure that investors put on the board. That's the pressure that board puts on executive. That's the pressure executive put on their managers and managers on their managers, and all the way down to individual contributors. So understanding that concept deeply, that tech companies generally are in the business of compressing time, because again, the compression happens because they need to generate returns for their investors given very limited amount of time. So that context is, I think it would be fantastic if most people who are applying to work in tech, if they understood it, and if they could incorporate that understanding into that dialogue that they're having with their prospective employer, I think it would be extremely beneficial for them.
Thanks for watching Tech Careers Decoded with Ev Kontsevoy of Teleport. Hopefully they've given you some practical ideas you can apply to your own career, whether you're just getting started or looking to stay ahead. Join us next time for more valuable insights from the leaders shaping the future of IT. See you then.